showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
I want to welcome you guys out today to another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast, episode 150. I'm Chris Hollifield. Welcome to the show. I want to thank you so much for taking some time out, giving it a listen, downloading it, streaming it, however you're consuming the podcast. Thank you so much for checking it out. IamSaltLake.com is the website. You can find out more about me, find out more about the podcast, as well as download any of the previous episodes right there on the website, as well as links for iTunes, Stitcher Radio. You can also find us on TuneIn Radio, Mediocre Radio Network.com. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find I Am Salt Lake. And make sure to subscribe. That way you don't miss a single episode as I introduce you to people in Salt Lake City that you might not be as familiar with. It's been a heck of a week. I actually just got back from the Pride Festival downtown. A little tired, a little worn out. The sun beat down, but it's been a fun week, a fun weekend. Hopefully you guys got out and enjoyed the city a little bit. Hopefully you got down to the Pride festivities as we celebrated equality here in Salt Lake City. It's nice to see such big crowds coming out for that support with all of that going on here in downtown Salt Lake City. Hey, I have a voicemail line. Give me a call. Let me know what you think of the show. 385-202-5926. That's the voicemail line. Give it a call. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking of the podcast, what you guys love about Salt Lake, what you're looking forward to, anything you want to share with me or any of the listeners of the podcast. Like I mentioned, Christian Pieper is on this episode of the podcast. He's a local stand-up comedian. He actually lives down in Utah County, but you've probably seen him at some of the local Wise Guys in Ogden, West Valley. He's all around town. He's making a name for himself, and he is a heck of a guy. He's got a great story. He's going to be sharing that here in just a second. But as always, before I jump into the episode, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, the Urban Lounge, located right in downtown Salt Lake City. Their website, the Urban Lounge SLC, is where you can go and find a complete lineup of all the upcoming shows that are going to be going there, as well as links for Twitter and Facebook. Make sure to give them a follow. Let them know you heard about them on I Am Salt Lake. That way they know you guys are listening. You guys are out there because Urban Lounge, their support is much appreciated. So give them a follow on Twitter or Facebook. Anyways, I'm going to quit talking. I'm tired. The sun was beating down on me. So I'm going to jump into the conversation that I had with Christian Pieper as he came over to my apartment here in beautiful downtown Salt Lake City. Describe yourself in 10 words or less.
10 words or less? I have a go-to for that. I've been asked this question before. I only need 5, and it's the fat in the hat. That's what I go with. I'm a big guy who wears hats a lot. That's a good description, I think.
What's the craziest hat you've ever worn?
I don't wear crazy hats.
Not
I just
like
cover my
fedoras.
head. It's more utility. I basically have to keep this sort of war zone covered up. I'm going bald, and I like my hair long on the sides, and it just looks horrible if I don't wear a hat. So I wear a hat to rein it all in. I guess I should say I'm a comedian. That's another word I can put in there.
What about a top hat? Have you ever thought about wearing top hats?
You know, I'm so insecure about drawing attention to myself, and I want to be. I'm a total attention whore. I want everyone in the world to pick me as their favorite person, but I don't want it to be because of a hat. You know, I'm not going to go peacocking it like Mystery or something, a pickup artist. I'm just going to wear my hat and draw attention with my ideas, I think.
I got
That's
you.
my goal.
So yeah, I mean, you're a local Salt Lake City comedian,
Yes.
and I want to get into that here in just a second. But I like to use this podcast as an opportunity for people to get to know you. I mean, they might have seen you at Wise Guys or around. Have you performed out of Utah at all?
Yeah. Several states have done festivals, and
What festivals have you done?
I did the Idaho Laugh Fest, which was in January. That was pretty cool. I've done a couple here in Utah, the Arts Festival, Rocky Mountain Laugh Off, that kind of thing. And then I've done one-nighters, around, and I did a 3-week trip to Europe with armed forces entertainment, so entertaining the troops kind of thing.
Wow. Is that a pretty tough gig to get involved in, or not really so much?
I mean, for me, it was just knowing the right guy, a guy that was booking a tour, and he knew me and liked my material, so he booked me for it. It's not... a lot of comics don't get the chance. It's really early to get that chance for me, but it was great. It was really an amazing experience. It was hard, but
what was hard about it?
It's 20 shows in 22 days, all different venues. I was the MC of the show, and as the MC, you're responsible for setting the tone for the show, and the tone's going to be different in every room because every audience is a little bit different. Every room's a little bit different, and you have to adjust to that and deal with all the weird little setups because it's also not comedy clubs. It's dining halls on military bases. So there's going to be odd quirks. Maybe the lights are super bright. Maybe you can't see the comedian's face that well. All the things you have to adjust to. So it was really hard, but it was a good experience. And
were you received fairly well? I mean, were people pretty receptive of you?
Yeah,
or they were just happy for the entertainment?
Exactly. Those crowds, sometimes I felt like I was using a machine gun when a water pistol would work. Like it was, they were just excited to have someone speaking English at them in an entertaining way. We go, Armed Forces Entertainment, it's not like USO Tours is the big one. And they go to sort of like huge bases or even into war zones, going to deployed troops. AFE deals more with station troops, and more permanent installations, but that are more off the beaten path. Like we weren't in big cities. We didn't go to Munich. We didn't go to, Barcelona or anything like that. It was small towns with little army bases. They don't get a lot of entertainment. So they were just happy we were there. So I got a great response, but I think I would have if I'd done about a third as well as I did.
So like how many people were there? Like 30 or 40?
It varied. Some were that small, because we did a NATO installation in Brussels.
Wow.
Not in Brussels, in the Netherlands. And it's a really small place in a really small town. And I think we had, most of the people there, and it was only 35, 40 people, it was a small group.
Still must have been a really cool experience, though, just to even get out of the United States and see the world a little bit.
Absolutely.
Was that your first time leaving the United States?
No, I've been to Brazil. I was a Mormon missionary in Brazil.
Okay. So you served a mission.
03 to 05. But other than that, this is my first time being a normal person outside of the United States.
So what, a Mormon missionary isn't a normal person?
Oh, not at all. You're an actor. In a lot of ways.
That's a good way to phrase it. That's a great way to phrase it. So were you born here in Utah? What's your history like?
I'm originally from Kentucky. I was raised in Kentucky.
The bluegrass state.
Bluegrass state. That's right. The grass is mostly green, but there is some blue. Horses, Southern hospitality.
So did you grow up your whole life there then?
I was born in Minnesota, but 6 months old, my parents moved to Kentucky. So all I know is Kentucky until I graduate high school. I go to BYU, and that's what brought me out.
BYU is what brought you to the lovely state of Utah, the Provo campus of BYU.
Campus, that's correct.
What'd you go to school for?
I studied English creative writing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that studying that helped you become get you interested in being a comedian? Or
I'd say it's definitely useful for comedy. There's no question. I was a writer before I even thought about being a comic. I was already
what were you writing?
Lots of different stuff. I was an essayist. Some small publications, things like that, poetry, and but I'm also a copywriter. So for web copy, I write websites.
Is that what you do now for work?
That's my day job. So
that must be kind of interesting. You ever thought about writing books, or have you written a book?
I've started. I've got a few chapters on a book, but it's such a huge endeavor, and I think I excel in really small bursts of quality writing, and that's why I think I'm a good copywriter. A headline is what I focus on all day. I'll be writing headlines, and that's a much more useful use. It's a much more productive use of my skills because
absolutely,
I have ADHD. I start swirling around if I'm trying to write something longer. So I think that's another reason why I like comedy is because it's a chance to really, even if you're doing a 45-minute set, you're doing 9 5-minute sets linked together, so it's, and even then they'll have 5 bits in one chunk, it's all really segmented and really granular, and I think I write better in that way. So
moving from Kentucky to Provo, was that a culture shock? Was it? I mean, even as a Mormon, I'm assuming, you served a mission. It's a different world down there.
Well, it absolutely is. I grew up, a Kentucky Mormon is so different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in California as a Mormon.
Yeah.
And then moved to Utah.
Yeah, but even I assume in California, you had lots of friends that were Mormon in your high school.
Sure. Yeah.
It was me and one other guy, like that kind of thing. And so you have to, and I think you were probably the same way, knowing you and knowing your style. Like, you have to be a normal kid to survive. You can't be like a cloistered weirdo, you know.
And then when everybody in Provo, I would say, is pretty much in Provo is probably Mormon. Yeah. I mean, I moved from California to Provo when I was 16, so I know how it is down there. You know what I mean? It's its own bubble.
I went from being like the good kid in town, without trying. I wasn't trying to. I wasn't a Peter Priesthood or anything in high school, but I didn't drink and I didn't party. So I was like the good kid. And then I went to BYU and immediately I was the bad kid.
Really?
Because I didn't shave every day and I watched R-rated movies and, so.
Did you have the beard? Did you try to grow the beard?
I couldn't grow it then. I'm just lazy.
You couldn't grow it because your face couldn't grow it, or BYU wouldn't let you grow it?
My face couldn't. I didn't care about BYU's rule, ever. I couldn't.
I've heard that they don't really enforce it at BYU, though, unless you go to a testing center, or maybe that was how it used to be.
There were always little groups, I worked for a while. I worked for the Office of Information Technology on campus. They're in charge of the on-campus computer labs. So I would just be a computer lab monitor. And they for some reason took it upon themselves to represent Jesus and represent the university at this higher level. And it was my job to go around telling people they couldn't use the computers because they had stubble.
Really?
And if I didn't and I got caught, I'd get fired. So I didn't do that job very long.
I mean, that must have been kind of weird.
It's so weird.
It's it's immodest or, oh my gosh, you got a beard on your face. You're going to make me do bad things.
I mean, if you want to say that if you can take what Jesus teaches and what the gospel is and, good things about being a good person.
Yeah.
And then you have the Pharisees. And that's really, BYU is totally Pharisaic. It's this weird code that goes around the law and says it's not good enough to be a good person. You have to be our kind of good person.
Yeah.
It's an orthodoxy system. And that I can't function in that very well. I hate rules that make no sense and I can't abide them.
Well, a beard, they want you to look tidy, presentable.
Right, but there's no reason for them to look tidy or presentable. There's no actual social benefit that the church gets. In fact, it makes the church look worse.
Well, yeah, but Brigham Young had a beard.
Exactly. So, it's arbitrary. It's one old dude's idea that's lasted for 60 years or whatever. And people are so afraid of change that they can't. And because people are so afraid of questioning things that they can't say, oh, this is a stupid rule. This is and there's no reason for it. And so that's all over the place at BYU, and that's why I didn't.
Do you think BYU ever will allow beards?
Probably
one day.
Here
we are on a discussion about beards at BYU. Right?
100 years ago, you couldn't show your ankles in public in some places. So things change, but it's always going to be behind the times, and that's one of the problems with the church that the church is facing right now. Is it can't grow, it can't wake up, and it can't accept the new world. Because it's, going to be just so many years behind just by the fact that the leaders of the church are elderly gentlemen who come from conservative backgrounds. And that's always going to be the case.
So maybe the younger generations coming up might, be where the change is.
But then there's going to be a new generation that's going to be progressive beyond where the church is at that point.
Absolutely.
So the church is always going to be playing catch up.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be frustrating for members of the church that aren't hung up on arbitrary, dumb ideas. And that's what the hard thing about it is. I still consider myself Mormon, but it's harder and harder for me to function in that. And, I find myself functioning less and less in it because it's hard to fit in and it's hard to feel like you're doing any good, being a part of
just
this.
Be a good person. That's what I say,
that's my philosophy.
And I think we were all raised to know what's right and what's wrong and treat people well, treat people with respect. And
well, and it's all about ethics. Like it's about being like a person that respects others and treats them well. And anything else is just, you have a hard time convincing me that anything else is necessary. Because what's the point?
So when did you get into comedy? Like, did you get into comedy at all out in Kentucky, or was it all here in Utah and Provo, or what's like how long ago did you get interested in doing comedy?
I've only been doing stand-up for a little over 3 years now. And so that was well after I moved out here. I mean, I started college in 2003 and went on a lot of detours at the Mission, quit school for a few years because I was kind of fed up with it, came back and finished and was working.
So you quit BYU, went back to Kentucky, or did you stay down in?
I did go back to Kentucky for a few years. I was an emergency substitute at my high school. So I went back and taught high school English, even though I didn't have a degree because I went in and I helped out.
Well, it's
in
Kentucky,
kind of thing.
Probably,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I did go back, and then I eventually came back out here because I was just a few semesters away from finishing school. Went back to BYU very reluctantly.
Finished it up and
I started doing comedy about 3 years ago, and I finished school 2.5 years ago. So I started right near the end. And
there was quite a surge. It seems like I've obviously talked to a handful of comedians on the show here, and it seemed like that's kind of been a typical response from a lot. Is like 3 or 4 years. So 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of more well-known local comedians like yourself and some of the others, I mean, you guys must have kind of all started together.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from stepping back and looking at it the way you are, like it definitely seems that way. For us, we all have our little groups. It's like, I started with so-and-so 6 months before this guy started. But to me, he feels like he's been doing it forever because he was already doing it when I started, So
did you just do did you go to a Wise Guys open mic, the typical story?
I was working a horrible desk job that I hated, and I was bored. So I listened to podcasts, found the comedy podcasts. They were my favorite ones.
What were you listening to?
Mark Maron.
Okay.
Comedy Bang Bang. At that time it was Comedy Death Ray Radio.
Just whatever
Pardo,
comedian podcasts were out there.
Whatever I could find, because, it's interesting and funny. And I found out that I like comedians more than I like other people. Like, I like people.
Why is that? Why? What did you like about them?
Because there's nothing arbitrary about humor. Like, it's something worth dedicating your life to, because it's real and it's universal and it's valuable. And to me, it just really resonated with me about this idea that I don't know about all this other stuff. Like, I don't know about all these rules that society or, my boss or my preacher wants to put on me, but I know what's funny, and I know that funny things are fun, and I like hearing them. And so it just resonated with me in this really guttural, instinctive way. And, Mark Maron came and did a show in February of 2011. I think I went and watched that, and it blew my mind. The fact that he was on stage for an hour and 45 minutes and connected in this way with the audience that I didn't even know was possible. I'd never been to a live comedy show. And, a week later I signed up for open mic, and I've been doing it.
What was it like, your first open mic? I mean, were you nervous?
Oh.
I mean, the typical nervous or describe, I mean, do you remember it at all? I
don't know what's typical. I know I was dying. Like, I was so nervous. Terrified, because it's such an odd and...
So what drove you to do it? I mean, if most people that get nervous in a situation like that might just leave.
Yeah, I think it was deep down, I was like, I can be good at this. Like, I believed that I could.
Were people telling you that you were funny?
Nah,
Work, family, friends, I've
never been a life of the party guy. That was never, my thing growing up. I wasn't,
you weren't the class clown.
But I had a group of 3 or 4 friends that we would hang out all the time at his house and write dumb songs on his keyboard and make really crappy, funny movies. And we would kill each other. Like, we would die laughing together. But I never felt like I was in any way funny on a broad level until I started hearing comedians talk about starting comedy. And it's like, oh, they were real people. Like, they were normal.
Yeah, they're just like me. They're suffering in life. They have their down moments, their struggles.
For some reason, I thought you don't something in my head, because I would watch comedians on Comedy Central and I'd be like, oh, they're just they were just Dimitri Martin. And so someone's like, hey, Dimitri Martin, you're hilarious. Be a comedian. And then they're on Comedy Central. I didn't understand this process of writing and doing open mics and discovering your voice and growing and learning how to connect with an audience. So once I started hearing those stories about people being bad when they started and then getting good, I was like, oh, well, if that's the case, then yeah, I think I might have what it takes to do that.
To be able to do it. And so you did your first open mic, and I mean, I'm assuming you did you go back the next week, or did it take you a little bit of time? Or,
no, I think I missed about 2 weeks of performing in those 3.5 years now. And that was when I was in finals my last semester in college, making sure I graduated. Other than that, I haven't gone a week without performing. And most weeks it's 4 or 5 nights a week.
And so, I mean, were people pretty receptive? Did you get some chuckles?
I had a couple people that I started with. I took a comedy class right when I started. Spencer King taught it. I'd seen him open for Mark Maron, and then I went to open mic and he was teaching a class. I'm like, oh, I'll do that.
Like, where was he teaching a class?
At Wise Guys.
Okay.
Just
so you can sign up and learn how to be funny. And
yeah, I think the idea was, I think he knows you can't teach that. I think the idea was like, he was teaching you like joke structure.
Okay.
And kind of telling you what not to do. Cause all open micers make the same mistakes when they start.
Which is, what do you think that is?
You think you're funny because you tell stories to your friends and they laugh. So you go on stage and tell your funny stories. And stories, I mean, Bill Cosby can tell stories, but that's because his stories are 100 jokes tied together. You have to have jokes in your stories or they're not going to work. You can't just, a story will work on a storytelling show. It does not work in a comedy club. It just doesn't. People expect you to be funny more frequently than a 2-minute story that's funny at the end.
Yeah.
I think I read you get judged like every 12 seconds as a stand-up.
Well, if you do like an hour set, storytelling will probably work well.
But even then, you can't just start out with a long story. You have to kind of, and even then, you watch these great comedians telling long stories, and you're going to have big punchlines all throughout the story. And that's a hard thing to learn how to do, to link jokes together that are good enough on their own to be good jokes.
But just form them all together. And
so people that are starting don't know how to do that. And so they tell stories, or they'll, waste time with, jokes that are hacky. And like a whole class he spent telling us what jokes were, like what premises not to do because they've been done too much. And after you've been doing comedy for a while, you can go into these more well-worn premises like differences between men and women because you're prepared and you know more about comedy. You know what's already been done and you can take it in a fresh and new, interesting direction. When you're starting, there's just a high likelihood you're going to just do the same joke someone else has already done.
Absolutely. And that must be the toughest thing about comedy is like, did somebody else do this joke already?
It's frustrating. You think of it like,
because you get called out so quickly if you steal somebody's joke.
Yeah, especially if you're high profile. Like guys on the local scene can get away with it quite a bit, and some do. But they
I've heard stories. I've heard stories where people will go up to those open mics and do like a word for word bit from like Louis C.K. or something like that, and it's just like they're just like, "Are you serious? You really just got up there and word for word, did somebody else's set?" That's
comedy is really sadly disrespected, I think, on a large scale.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think people like it, but I don't think they think it's hard. Because otherwise, it would every time, like not every time, 4 or 5 times out of 10, when I tell people that I'm a comedian, they say, "Oh, I've always thought about trying that." I think they all think they can do it. They all think they can be comedians. You go on morning radio, every radio guy thinks that he can do comedy.
So why do you think you can do it versus somebody else?
Well, I thought maybe I could, and I tried, and I got good results. I started, doing well on shows, and I realized I was capable of it. But it's just this fact that everyone has this sort of thought that, oh yeah, that's in my. But
you have to work at it. You can't. It doesn't just happen overnight. Like you said, you've been doing this 3 years.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that there's been moments where you're just like, is this worth it?
Absolutely.
Am I wasting my time?
Yeah, every 6 months, I think I'm bad again. And I'm like, oh, I'm just not good at this. And then I go back and watch clips of me from 6 months ago. I'm like, oh, I'm a lot better than I used to be. And I thought I was good then. So
is it just kind of like you say, okay, every 6 months? I mean, is it just kind of that feeling you get, or is it because somebody booed you, or I mean, what?
You have a bad set that affects you, and everyone has them. Everyone bombs sometimes. just because, not every crowd is in a good mood. People say it's never the crowd's fault. Sometimes it's totally the crowd's fault. Sometimes crowds aren't listening. Sometimes they're good and bad people. So there are good and bad audiences. Because if you get enough bad people in an audience, it's a bad audience.
And you could actually use that in any aspect of life,
right?
In any business, work, music, art. I mean, anything.
Yeah, you don't hit a home run.
You're going to have your bad moments, but if you pick yourself, if you truly want to continue to do it, pick yourself up. At what point? I mean, you've done headlining shows now.
Yeah. Just last week was my first one.
Oh, that was your first one?
Well, my first at a club.
Up at Ogden?
Yeah, Wise Guys in Ogden.
Wise Guys in Ogden. How long of a set can you do?
That's the thing.
Did you do? Or
I'd done headlining link sets before.
Yeah.
But just at bad, bar shows where it was it does there's only 15 people here. They're not that interested. It doesn't matter how good I do. So I can do any joke I've ever thought of. And I don't really care.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, but this was really important to me because it's a club stage. I love Wise Guys. I respect them. It's a lot of confidence to put in someone to put them in a headlining slot on a weekend. So I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I was worried about doing my full time just because I didn't want to do all my jokes. I wanted to do my best jokes. And I was really surprised.
How did it go for you? Was it pretty good?
Yeah, it went really, really well. It went better than I even hoped, much better than I feared it might have gone. I did 50-minute sets both nights.
Okay.
The two things I was worried about is not doing enough time and having to go to my B material.
Yeah,
having to do some jokes that I'm not that confident about, new ones or old ones that I stopped doing, just to make up the time. And I was worried about there not being a crowd there.
And was there a crowd?
There was a crowd.
Yeah.
They were great numbers for this time of year, and I was really humbled. A lot of my friends came out, and a lot of even strangers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a drive up to Ogden for Salt Lake City people,
It really is. And, people came out, and they were good shows. I did my time and felt really good. So, and I learned, it's really fascinating because once you've done that, it's a totally different animal than doing these 15-minute guest sets that I'm used to doing, or even 30-minute feature sets. The 45-minute headlining set is totally different.
People are coming probably for you. So you're like, oh my God.
And even if they're not coming for you, it's nice. You get a boost from being the headliner. Cause if you go to a comedy show and you don't know any of the comics, if the headliner's bad, that means your night's ruined. Right. So I think people have a strong incentive to enjoy the headliner.
Yeah.
Because that's what keeps them from having wasted their time and money. So people let you explore a little bit more. They're okay with you going in even darker or, different directions than, if you're doing a guest set and you do a joke that's a little too dirty or that's a little too dark, the crowd will quit on you. But crowds don't quit on headliners. They laugh harder than they do for other comics. There's a boost from it. You also have the check drop, which is about 2/3 of the way through your set.
What's a check drop?
Check drop is when the wait staff brings the checks out.
Okay.
So last call's already happened, and here come the wait staff dropping checks on everybody's.
And so they're kind of preoccupied with that.
100%. It feels like you've been abandoned, and no one in the crowd knows it because they're all looking at their checks. So they don't know that anything has changed because they're focused down here. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, a third of you are paying attention to me now, and you can feel it. And so you have to kind of work through that in a weird way, find some way to get through that. If it happens during your best jokes, you better find a way to stall until you can, do the jokes in a way that'll really hit the audience the way you want it to. If it happens during your weaker jokes, you might have a really dead period. So you may want to try and do a little stronger.
Something a little, yeah.
It's hard and weird, and it was a really neat experience. I had no clue what it would be like, and it was really cool.
So who was do you have who was a touring comedian? Who was the first touring comedian that you had the opportunity to open for?
Let's see, the first one.
Do you remember that, or some of the first ones?
Some of the first ones.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had some cool opportunities, right?
Yeah. There have been, amazing.
Keith Stubbs is a great guy to get local acts.
He's the best. You will not find a comedy club anywhere in the country that supports local comedians better than Wise Guys does.
Yeah, and that's what I love about Wise Guys.
Yeah, and that he gives people chances before they've earned it, before they deserve it, before they're even ready for it.
And see, I've heard people say that. Why do you think he knows that, or do you think he believes that you deserve it?
I think he knows that, and I think he's okay with it. He knows that it's a process, and he knows that people have to have that experience
to get up there and do it.
Because that's the thing. Before I think I got my first Wise Guys opening set like about 8 months into comedy, 6 to 8 months in.
And what did he just like come up and approach Christian? No.
He's not out there.
Let's have you open for Bill Cosby.
He's not out there trying to get people on the stage because there's people fighting over that stage time.
Really?
Oh yeah, everyone wants to be on Wise Guys stages, and there's only so many slots you can get. So, like he always says, "Hey, I'm not going to like go out and beg anyone to do this. So you have to ask him. You have to be emailing him." Or
he wants to see you put some initiative into it and say, okay, this guy really wants it. Because
for every one guy that wants it, there's 10 that are just like, yeah, this would be cool. I'll be a cool guy up on stage, don't realize what it takes and aren't really that committed to it. It's just something they're trying. And if, so I think he wants to know that someone's really in. And once they are, then he helps a ton.
Is that kind of the same way when you do a headlining show? Like, do you say, hey, you know what? I'm ready to do my own show.
Oh, well, sometimes I know some people have done that. He asked me because I think that there was an opening on the schedule. And I think I was at the right place at the right time. Like I happened to be at the club when he was like, oh, I need someone to headline. Oh, this guy, I think it was as simple as that. And again, like it's super early in my career to have that opportunity. And you don't get that in places other than Salt Lake. That chance to headline a club stage 3 or 4 years in. That's really rare. And Keith is super kind to comedians to give them that chance. And it's the same thing. It's just on another level. It's that, you're not ready until you've done it. Like no one's like, okay,
well,
now
you're never ready.
Exactly. And because you don't know what it's going to be like until you do it. So you can't be sure that you're ready, even if you are.
I mean, you talk about comedy career. I mean, would you like to? Where would you like to see this go for you?
Oh, I mean,
where would you? I mean, do you want to tour?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I want to be a big name, popular comedian.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with admitting that.
Yeah, I think so. And the fame isn't the big draw for me. What I want, and I think it's because I was a comedy fan before I was a comedian, is I really want respect from people that I respect. I want good comedians to think I'm a good comic. And that's a lot what drives me to work harder and to keep working. And so when I open for somebody, they see me and they're like, oh, he's good.
Yeah.
That's what I love. Like more than anything else, I want good comedians to think I'm funny.
And do they? I mean, when you open for somebody, has anyone ever like, wow, Christian, you're pretty cool. I like that set. It was pretty funny.
A lot of people are really nice and helpful in that way. Some aren't, and that's normal. Like I get it. Like so-and-so big comedian has seen hundreds of people open for him. Why should he like pay attention to every single one? Like I get that. I really appreciate it when kind comedians watch your set and they have feedback, even if they don't say, oh, you were great. Just the fact that they pay attention and they have feedback. I love it when they treat you like a peer, that's a rush for me. Like when I opened for Greg Barrett and Janine Garofalo at two, heavy hitters, like great comedians that have huge respect and that I respect and love their acts. I had the chance to open for them and then sit in the green room and talk to them and just chat. And it was so surreal to have these people that I love and respect, like on a hero worship level.
I'm not worthy.
Talk to you like you're one of the group. And they know I'm obviously not on that level, but just to kind of treat you like you're part of the.
Well, they had to start somewhere though too.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a great feeling. And I'm not ashamed to say that I love that. Like I love it when I feel like I get respect from people that I respect and love.
What do you think of the local comedy scene in general? I mean, it's obviously growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are great comedy scenes throughout the country, and that's fueled by there being great stages for them and great gatekeepers for them. Like Keith Stubbs is here, and I think it's a great comedy scene. I think it can almost be like its biggest strengths can be its drawbacks at the same time. Like the fact that it's so welcoming to new comedians and young comedians and inexperienced ones can mean that like
everybody thinks they can be the funny guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like you see people do 2 open mics and then they're unveiling their comedy website and they have they're releasing their album and, they're ready to be big shots, and I think it's a little too.
Have you really seen that happen?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Not just once. Like, it's a consistent thing that happens constantly where there's just this presumption by people that because, they've done it a few times and had good results that they're, and,
and more power to them, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean, they're trying.
It sounds like whiny and bitchy for me to be like, is it okay to say?
Oh yeah, you're fine. Yeah.
Okay. Like, for me to say that, but, and more power to them. It's just, you see it and you can't help but feel like comedy's being devalued a little bit here.
Yeah.
And I think there are people that have been to shows, like local comedy shows, that have seen people that aren't ready to be marketed to audiences. People that are just figuring it out, that haven't gotten their feet wet, that don't really know what they're doing. And so people see them and they're like, oh, is that what it takes to be a comedian? and it frustrates me to tell people I'm a comic and they say, like a real comic or like a local comic? And you're like, well, there's no difference. Like, there's good and bad local comics. I'm a good local comic. Like,
yeah.
And that frustrates me to have to make that distinction where I wish people would just do it a little longer and just get a little better before they start marketing themselves and getting exposure because it affects comedy. It's just like, other industries have been devalued. Photography, like how many photographers are there?
Yeah.
And
I got my iPhone, so I'm, the best photographer out
Absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Graphic design. My wife's a graphic designer, and apparently everyone else in the world is a graphic designer too, because they bought Photoshop. Like, there's, there's these certain careers that, as access is a little easier, it starts to devalue it, the perception of it. And I think comedy has suffered from that on a local level. But I'm not going to complain because it's what's given me the chance to do as much as I've done at this point. So, I was on stages before I was ready. So you can't complain when it's helped you. But I do wish that there was a way that we could.
Well, you've kind of let it play its course and you've let yourself develop. You've been working on it.
I don't think I've gotten ahead of myself.
Yeah.
I bet you get that. I bet you get people emailing you about being on your show all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're like, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about you. I don't know anything about you as a performer.
Well, yeah, yes and no. At the same time, it's kind of like, well, if you feel like you have a story to share, let's give it a shot,
There you go.
And I try to be open, I've been contacted sometimes by people that it's like they just want to, come on and, it's like a giant advertisement. It's like, no, I want a chance to get to know you. If you have a story to share, kind of how you got to where you're at, let's do it. So you did a headlining show recently in Ogden, and we mentioned you're going to be doing some open or some stuff at the Pride Fest.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
This probably won't be up before that, but let's. Where's that going to be at?
I don't know the details about the stage. I know there's going to be a comedy stage at Pride on Sunday.
At the actual Sunday in downtown.
Downtown.
Yeah. So it's not like at one of the clubs the Friday or Saturday before. No. Wow.
No, it's going to be downtown. I assume it's going to be outdoors because everything's outdoors at Pride. But
yeah, you get sunburned.
Yeah. So I don't know all the details. I'm just really excited to do it because it's something that I really have wanted to be a part of, and it's a chance to do what I'm good at. In some small way to be a part of it. Because I think it's so important, especially here in Utah, to make sure that we celebrate the diversity that we do have. And
well, I like to hear that, especially somebody who, from your history of,
oh yeah. But like I said, I've never been like a Mormon. I'm just like, I've always disagreed about it, almost everything.
But I don't see why, and I know that there has been some Mormons that have come out and said, hey, you know what? We're here, and I wish more people could.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of, and it's not just, there's people of all different demographics and religious faiths that have kind of turned their back to that. I think it's important to just, hey, you know what? I'm here for you. Cause I think so often people aren't. And then you wonder, well, why is, the suicide rates or any of that.
Right. And And that's the funny thing too. Like even within, like we'll talk about Mormonism because we're in Utah, you know, but within the religious culture here, like I said, it's an orthodoxy system. So what happens in that? You have people being competitive about being more down the line, you know, who can be a stricter, and that means you're the better one. You know, that's what happens in orthodoxy.
You drink Coca-Cola.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and you start like really cloistering yourselves and shutting out anybody that's a little bit different. You go to Kentucky, like I guarantee you if you went to the branch I grew up in Kentucky where we have 35 people at church every Sunday, you go there and poll them. It's going to go from who cares, like let them do what they want to, yeah, awesome. I think gay people are great. Like that's going to be the range there.
Yeah.
And you might have a couple weirdos that are like, oh, you know, that haven't figured it out yet, haven't adjusted to the fact that some people are different. But I think here you have that dynamic, especially at BYU and even in, you know, the wards where you have these wards that have thousands of young couples that just by nature are going to be competitive with each other.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that's just what happens in these systems where, you know, you have callings that mean that you're maybe on the side of, you know, maybe one of the better, you know, couples. And so you have this competition and everyone's fighting to be that much more righteous than the next person. And so I think people really try hard to draw these lines and be really defensive. You know, if you really believe in your God and if you really believe in your church, what are you defending it against? Like who's going to take it down?
Yeah.
Like relax and let people be themselves, do what you think is right, and don't worry about what other people do.
Well, yeah, whether you agree with it or, I mean, we all have our silly things that we do. Yeah. You know, and it's like, just let people be people. And
I'm like I said, I think everyone evolves on topics. Like you asked me in high school about gay people and I'd probably be like, ugh, gross, you know, because you're a high schooler in conservative Kentucky. Like I started the Young Republicans Club at my high school. Like
there you go.
I'm not starting any kind of Republican club at this point in my life, you know, so you change. And, you know, I've evolved to the point of saying, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with them doing what they want to do. I think it's wrong, but, you know, let them do what they want to. No, we should actually help them and protect their rights while still, you know, saying, I don't agree with what you do, to finally saying, you know, I think what you're doing is awesome and cool. And I'm on board with you as a person. And I'm on board with you in general as a group of people. I think you're great. Yeah. Like that's really like, that's the evolution that happens. And more people are progressing.
Oh, absolutely.
On that stuff,
it's, I mean, you know, it's changed a lot, you know, in the last even couple of years, you know, and I think people, it's kind of, it's come down to just a human rights issue, you know.
Yeah.
But what else do you do for fun besides comedy? I mean, what else? What are some of your
time to do anything else?
The other hobbies and interests? Christian, you know, what do you do when you're?
I spend 40 hours or so working on copywriting a week. I spend another 40 driving to comedy shows, performing at comedy shows, hanging out with comics after comedy shows, which is an important part of the job. You know, the networking and
it is.
You know, and it's the funnest part. There's nothing more fun than going out after shows on a weekend and hanging out and going to a diner. You get to go eat at Village Inn with like Rob Delaney or Mark Maron, like people. And it's like, this is so surreal and weird that I get to just hang out with these people that I love.
Rob Delaney's great, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's so funny.
Yeah.
And it was funny because he's a Twitter king and we're sitting there eating and he's just tweeting and you see his tweets come to your phone and he's making them at the table.
You're like, wow, he just tweeted that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the coolest thing in the world. So as much time I watch TV shows, I love TV shows.
What are some of your favorite TV shows right now?
I'm really pushing Rick and Morty right now.
I'm not familiar with that.
You know, Dan Harmon of Community.
Yeah.
Created Community. If I have a hero, it's probably him, like in terms of writing and comedy. I love his work. He's just the most amazing. And Rick and Morty is a new show on Adult Swim. It just finished its first season. It's animated. It's about a grandpa who's like a mad scientist and he takes his grandson on these like space and intergalactic adventures. He's also a drunk. So it's very haphazard and lots of things go wrong. And it plays on all these weird sci-fi tropes, which I'm not a huge sci-fi guy, but the show's so funny that, I mean, they did a whole episode where the grandpa gave the kid a remote control that can get him TV channels from alternate realities. And so the whole episode is just him changing the channel, seeing a new show. And you can tell the shows were thought up just by Dan Harmon standing in front of a microphone and improvising TV shows. Like he's like, oh, a dad and his uncle are fighting against giant zombie monkeys. And you just see it like appearing on screen as it's obviously just, that's how they made up alternate reality TV shows. It's just improvising weird ideas.
Yeah.
And that's 30 minutes of that. And it's hilarious. Like you'll die laughing. It's the greatest show.
Would you ever like to write a TV show?
Absolutely.
I mean, being a writer.
Yeah. I mean, the dream for me, and it's always frustrating to say it because it's so far away and so unlikely. You have to get so lucky and you have to get so much better at what you're doing, is the Louis C.K. thing. It's the chance to make your own TV show, to be a great respected comedian doing specials. And, that would be like, if I could swap bodies and brains with someone, it would be with him.
But at least you are a dreamer. You know what I mean? I think so many people, I don't know how old you are, but you hit 30.
I turned 30 on Sunday.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Last Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I mean, I think so often when especially when people hit 30, it's like they die inside. It's like, okay, I work my 9 to 5. I'm going to come home and kick this or kill this 12 pack and yell at my wife all night, and you have to be a dreamer. You have to have goals and try to reach them.
At the same time, that's the real conflict about pursuing a creative field, is I have to be realistic. Like I have to be completely aware of how hard it is to make it as a comedian. It's really hard. You have to be great. You have to work really hard, and then you have to get lucky. Like you can do the first two and still never make it. There are tons of people that never make it because their opportunities didn't line up. But
at least you tried.
Exactly. You try, but you start thinking, I have a wife, we don't have any kids yet, no plans for them right now. But if we do, then it's like, how much do I owe it to myself and to those around me to, be reasonable about it? And so the way that I treat it is I just say, I just don't want to be the guy that's saying it doesn't matter what my life is like. I'm going to do what I love. Is your wife pretty supportive? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That helps a ton. So I'm the guy that says, as long as my life stays good and as long as I'm enjoying it and as long as I'm getting better and as long as I'm going on the right path, I'm going to keep pursuing what I love. And because there are other things I could do. If it doesn't work out in comedy, I could do other things. I have a degree. I could get a job. I mean, I'm already a copywriter. I could do that more. Yeah, you could be a mailman or there's plenty of. What would be your dream job if you could? I mean, well, besides a comedian, like if what would be a job that let's say even a day? I'd be a therapist. A therapist, like any specific field or? I think relationship. Oh, me and my wife did that. Well, let's together. Talk relationship. Yeah, me and my wife did that together before we got married. We've known each other for 10 years, dated off and on. She broke up with me once. I broke up with her once. You have to do that in a relationship to see if it works. Right? But then when we got back together, we're like, if we're really going to do this, we have to figure this out because we've got big time communication problems. And so we went and learned, and it blew my mind. I happened to take a class at the same time at BYU. That semester, I took the most amazing class by the most amazing teacher. It was a film and literature class, but our focus was on romance addiction in film and literature, and about how movies and literature affect our psychology, how they inform our attitudes about romantic relationships, and how crazy we all are. Like, they say like the number one like source for people's relationship knowledge now and relationship assumptions is like Twilight, which is a quasi-abusive relationship. Like that's what's informing young people about what relationships are supposed to be like. And we've always taken our cues from literature. Go back to Tristan and Isolde. Like you've got these stories that are about like people like being so unrealistic and it all works out in the end, and we have this idea of it needing to be grand and needing to be at a fireworks and vampires. Instead of having, I'm not a huge C.S. Lewis guy, but I love something that he said about what he called the quieter love, which is that when you start out in a relationship, you have this love that's about, it's sexual and it's charged and it's drawn by attraction and you want to be around the person. You want to mold, like meld your face into theirs, like that charged thing you have at the beginning of a relationship. And that just has to end because you can't live your whole life like that because you have to get a job and you have to take care of your family and you have to take care of real life. And then if you can't replace that with what he called the quieter love, then your relationship fizzles and dies.
Well, don't you love these relationships? Oh, we've never fought. It's like, gosh, I mean, I hate to see the day when you do fight because you won't know what to do.
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's healthy to get in a little bit of a squabble and to have a disagreement and not always agree with what your partner has to say.
And that's the thing. If you don't fight, then you're not being intimate.
Yeah.
Because if you aren't revealing yourself to your partner,
well, plus makeup sex is it? Anyways.
Yeah,
so.
No, you have to reveal who you are really, or you'll never be in a true relationship with a person. So you have to be vulnerable enough to like bare everything about you to the person and let them do the same. And that means you're going to have tons of disagreements because no two people are the same. And you just have to be able to handle that. And that's what therapy did for me and my wife. And I'm really glad we did it. Like when we did it, before we even got married, before we even got engaged, we started, let's make this relationship work if it's going to.
Well, I think a lot of people even on a single level, a solo level can benefit from therapy. And I think so many people are afraid to go to therapy.
Yeah.
It's so beneficial to just sit there and have somebody to talk to. I mean, instead of going to this is what I do for therapy. I just sit here and talk to people on my podcast. Yeah. Just listen to me. I have something to say. No, but I mean, for real though. And I think a lot of people, and I don't know, maybe is it a Utah thing? I don't know. Maybe, I think it's probably all over. It's not just here.
No, it definitely is. Like everybody needs, I think everyone deeply wants, because you have your love in your family as you're growing up.
Yeah.
And that's supposedly unconditional, ostensibly. And it's like your parents love you no matter what. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't even matter what you do. And they love you. And there's something weird about that. Like we want to be loved for what we do and who we are and what we offer. Like we want someone to understand us and love us because they understand us. Not love us and then try to understand us because they love us.
Yeah. And that's hard.
Yeah. And that requires you to bare yourself and be vulnerable. And that's hard. And I think we all yearn for that. We yearn to be accepted for who we are. And maybe more so in Utah than other places because of the Mormon culture, because you grow up with so much pressure on yourself to be a certain kind of person.
Yeah, I knew. Well, if I'm going to therapy, I must be crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
I must be a crazy person. I don't want my friends to know I'm there.
Well, and we're just so afraid of like disagreeing or
questioning.
Yeah, which are the most important things to do. If you don't question something, you never know if it's real.
Yeah.
You can't, I don't believe these stories of people that say that they've never questioned something and they know it's true. No, you don't, because you haven't questioned it yet. Like you got to question it first so you can actually figure out if you believe that. I really don't think you can believe in something without casting doubt on it ever. And so I think that revealing yourself is really important to get that acceptance that we actually want, because we're so afraid of being rejected by our families, by our culture.
Any age we're afraid of rejection.
Yeah, totally. And the trick is being accepted for not being yourself. You have to learn that's not good enough. It's not good enough to be accepted for pretending to be someone else. You have
be
to,
yourself.
Yeah. Live and die with who you are. And if you are rejected, at least you're being rejected instead of, not even being on the playing field.
Well, I've had a heck of a time sitting down with you, Christian.
It's gone by fast. Are
we
done? No, I'll say it's not so, Chris.
Well, no, we could do what you got anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't get a chance to? Do you have a website?
I do not have a website. My Twitter account. I want people to follow me on Twitter.
Well, what's your Twitter handle? And I'll put it on the website too. We'll get people
at Pieper Comedy. That's Pieper Comedy. I'm trying to get those followers. It's so hard.
Yeah, Twitter's. How long have you been doing Twitter for?
I started before I started doing stand-up. That was another one of my influences to start doing stand-up, was reading these funny tweeters.
Oh, dude, there was so many hilarious people on
Fart.
Yeah,
best.
Yeah, he's so great. There's so many great Twitter accounts. What about that? My mind's blank. I shouldn't even have brought it up. There's this one Twitter account. I can't even think of what it is. I don't even know why I brought it up.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Dad Boner.
Dad Boner. Or Dog Boner or Dad
I think is it a Dad Boner Dad or something like that.
There's that one. There's Dog Boner. That's also great.
Yeah.
There's Sex Carl. I really like Sex Carl. I really like at Dag. He's one of the true geniuses on the internet at DEGG.
Yeah.
And it's just filthy and weird.
And you don't always know who's behind it.
No.
You know, they put a fake picture up,
Yeah.
you know, but that's what I love about Twitter. It's just like, just get it out there in 140 characters. I love Twitter is by far my favorite social media platform.
Mine too. It's a frustrating one.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating because, at least for me, I feel like I work so hard on something and you put it out there and it's like a tiny little drop in a river of content. Like people are following 400 people, and if they get 200 tweets in a minute, they're not going to read all 200. They're just going to scroll right on by this brilliant thing that you thought up and put out there. And so it can be really frustrating. You can feel like you're shouting out into an empty room sometimes on Twitter, but I still like it way more than Facebook.
What gets you more excited, a retweet or a favorite?
Oh, retweet. A favorite's a soft retweet. A favorite's like, I like this, but I don't want other people to know I like it. Like a retweet's
I'm keeping it my dirty little secret, right?
Yeah, totally. And I'm guilty of it. I favorite tons of stuff because you're trying to protect your feed. You don't want to, retweet too many people and, exhaust your followers.
Isn't that funny how there's this like chemistry behind Twitter? It's like, well, I don't want to flood this and exactly. I don't want, and then you take it so personally if someone unfollows you. And,
you have no idea. Just when that number drops, you're just like, oh.
And you cry, and then you have to get a quick therapist appointment, but you're on Facebook too.
I'm on Facebook too. You can add me
people,
on there.
People can follow you.
I don't have a fan page because I don't have
fans. I don't have fans.
That's another thing. The guy comes to open mic twice. So-and-so comedian fan page. It's like, ugh.
Well, you want to make sure when you start that fan page that you get some likes versus sitting there with like 10 fans.
And I think the idea is that you need to do it when you actually have fans. Like at this point, if someone's my fan, I want to be friends with them.
Yeah.
Because, I don't have so many friends or so many fans that they can't be the same people.
Well, and they don't really serve a purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're okay with any Joe Schmo following, becoming a friend with you on Facebook, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And it gets to the point where you have too many. And then you need a fan page, or you don't want, or you want to have a personal. What do you need? 5,000 friends? Come on, what do you got? Are you close to that, Christian? No, I'm just kidding. Nowhere close. Don't rub it in. But or when you are really at that point where just because someone liked my jokes, I don't necessarily want them invited into my life. But I'm not at that point now. If you like my jokes, I want to be your best friend. I want to talk with you all day long. Like, I love it when people like my jokes.
Do you post pictures of your food, your dinner? I know.
I'm a huge food guy. Like, honestly, before I came here, I went to Avenue's Bistro on 3rd. Hadn't tried that yet.
Isn't that delicious?
So good.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. But I try every restaurant. I mean, I've been to every restaurant in Salt Lake practically.
What are some of your favorite? I typically ask that.
If you want to have this conversation, I'll talk to you for hours. Best restaurant in Salt Lake City is Forage, no question.
What's it called?
Forage.
I'm not familiar.
It's
where's it at?
It's close to 9th and 9th. It's like 9th South, 7th East.
And I've probably driven by it a million times.
It looks like a house.
Oh, are you sure it's not just some kind couple?
What?
You knock on the door. Can I have dinner with you guys?
Viet Fan?
Yeah.
He started it with Bowman Brown.
Okay.
About Bowman Brown? I think that's right. About 4 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And it's wonderful. Every day it's a new fresh menu with local ingredients and fresh ingredients. It's like 12 courses and it costs you a pretty penny, but it's an event. It's a spectacular event every time you go. It's great.
I love it. I love how descriptive you get with that. It's an event. I got to wear my party hat.
Oh man, I can probably, if I had to, and it wouldn't be good radio, so we won't do it. I could detail for you every course I had there last time I went, like from start to finish. Cause I sit there and I look at this food and I'm like, you're going to be inside me. And I commit to it and I enjoy it with my entire being. And that's the way I am with food. That's why I'm fat. And there's no way around that. I'll never be skinny.
But at least, you're enjoying life, Yeah. What else you like? What other
Copper Onion?
Oh, delicious.
Unbelievable.
Delicious.
So good. I loved Plum Alley until it's not there anymore, which is sad, but great ones. Fresco Italian Cafe in Sugar House.
Okay.
15th and 15th, I think. Really, really, really good. Go to Park City, the farm at the Canyons, farm to table, local, just great stuff. Oh my. on 3300 South.
Oh, best little sandwiches in the world.
Yeah.
And they're cheap.
Yeah, you can get the Sunnyside Up egg banh mi.
It's like under $3.
Yeah, it's like $2.75.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing you'll eat all week. Like, there's no reason people shouldn't eat there.
Well, and I like to talk about these local eateries because, I want to get, especially here in Salt Lake, A, if you've just moved here, or B, if you live here and you're the typical, let's go to Applebee's, It's like, come on, there's so much good eating here. So much diversity.
The food scene in Salt Lake, it's unbelievable for a city this size.
Yeah.
Like you go to similar cities, I don't know, I guess Boise's a lot smaller, but similarly sized cities. And, as a comedian, I've been to some of them and the food's just not up to snuff the way it is in Salt Lake.
Why do you think it is that way here? Why? I mean, do you think there's any reason behind it, or we just like to eat here?
You're asking good questions. I mean, there's so many weird things about the city that I don't understand. I don't understand why comedy is successful as it is here.
Yeah.
You'd think it wouldn't be.
No.
You'd think when you have half the population that's known for being pretty humorless that it wouldn't work that well.
Well, and I think a lot of that, and that's even what I'm trying to have with this show is all it takes is one person to make that change. Keith Stubbs think about if Salt Lake didn't have Keith Stubbs. I mean, honestly, for the where would the comedy scene be? I mean, there's some other great local mic or open mic places, or there's more comedy shows at different venues. But I think you need that main hub.
If you didn't have Wise Guys, don't do comedy here.
Yeah.
Go someplace because I mean, the other shows are great, but it's just such a cool place, and you have that for food too. You have your Ryan Louders, you have your Walter from Austria Walter, and you have your Viet Fan.
See, and I need to get more foodies, more food people on the podcast. I've had a few, but I need to get some more. Or the food truck scene. Do you get involved with the food? Do you eat any of the food trucks?
I love Chow Truck.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I haven't had much experience with other ones, but that one's great.
I mean, even the food truck scene here in Salt Lake is phenomenal. I mean, Lewis Brothers, I love them. Oh my gosh.
It's Lewis Brothers?
Lewis Brothers. They had these great falafel or these fries. I forgot what they call them, but I get them and they're delicious. They're usually parked outside of a bar.
You're reminding me of so many other great places. Spitz on Broadway.
Spitz is fantastic.
Oh, this is so great.
You're
Del
getting
Mar
excited.
Al Lago.
Yeah.
Have you been to Del Mar Al Lago yet?
I don't know. I don't think so.
It's like 1500 South, something like that. It's kind of in like a weird spot.
Check them out, huh?
Yeah, ceviche. Get like baby squid on your plate. Put that in your mouth.
I don't know if I'm not. Baby squid.
You a vegetarian?
No. I mean, I have been in points in my life, but
my wife is.
Oh, your wife's a vegetarian.
Yeah, so I hope she doesn't listen to the part where I talked about the baby squid. She'll start crying.
You ever thought about going vegetarian?
Totally. I almost.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
You really did?
I was one decision away. I'd researched it. I put in my. It's when I first wanted to date my wife. And I was like,
you felt like she wouldn't love you unless you were a vegetarian.
Well, I was worried about it.
Yeah.
And I loved her so much, thought she was cool. I'm like, I should look into this. I got all this PETA information. I was reading everything about animal rights. And I 100% believe the right thing to do is not to eat meat. But I also believe the right thing to do is not to eat animal products. So that means you have to go vegan.
Well, see, and I was vegan for like 7 years.
That's the thing. When I realized that my ethical compass was pointing me toward veganism, even beyond vegetarianism, I'm like, well, there's no way I'm doing that.
Well, and that's what happened with me is I got to the point where it was like, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it's like, I mean, even the paint on my wall, maybe that has animal products on it. What do I need to do? Live in a tent in the woods? And I mean, it gets, so you do what you can do.
And and for good or for bad, I'm an all or nothing person. I know I shouldn't be. I should just be a vegetarian and be okay with that. But it wouldn't be good enough for me. And so I get something out of eating meat. I get fierce enjoyment and a really amazing experience every time. And I personally wouldn't get anything about not eating it if I wasn't also a vegan, which I'm not willing to do.
There would be the day when Christian Piper's a vegan.
Well, then I'd get skinny.
Yeah. I don't know. I've seen some, heavier vegans.
Vegans are cheaters.
A lot of carbs.
I don't believe them.
But what about Lucky 13? I always got to talk Lucky 13. I love their burgers.
Those burgers are great.
The peanut butter burger. I'm a big. Have you had the peanut butter burger?
I have not. They put peanut butter on it?
There's a peanut butter burger, and I know I probably talked about it on the podcast, but it's probably one of the best burgers.
That's one of those things.
It sounds weird. It sounds weird.
It doesn't. It's one of those things that I hear that.
Am I making you hungry? You're
making me know like I'm going to die of diabetes eventually because there's too many of these things. The pizza place on my street, I live in Utah County. There's this little pizza place. I'm not going to say which one it is because my wife doesn't like me to say where we live.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But they just went all you can eat. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'll be dead now.
Yeah,
like, see you like 20 years of my life because...
I'll have to talk to you off air. You know, I want to. I don't think there's any all you can eat pizza places in Salt Lake here. I used to live up north in Davis County for a titch, and there was one up that way called the Hungry Bear. I don't know if it's there anymore, but it was like $4.99.
That's
you got
a description.
You got you got all you can eat pizza and salad and pasta. I mean, it was great. But anyways, anything else you want to talk about? Any other shows you want to talk about coming up that you want to promote? Why we got listeners listening in?
I don't have anything scheduled that I want to waste people's time promoting right now.
Yeah.
But my friend Andy Gold, who worked really hard to promote my shows in Ogden.
Great guy.
One of my favorite comedians, like not just in Utah, in general. He's great. Do yourself a favor. June 16th. Oh, I hope I'm getting the date right. It's a Thursday. No,
I could look it up. I could look it up here on the computer.
Yeah, if you could. Sorry, I feel bad. But I should have looked this up. But he's a great comedian. He's a wonderful joke writer. He'll surprise you. He'll do a great show, and you got to go to that. It's only $5 too.
I'm trying to look here.
If you can't spend $5 on some of the best comedy you'll see, then you need to. Well,
there's all kinds of, if you just go to wiseguyscomedy.com, go to the calendar.
That's correct, which is what you're doing right now.
It's what I'm doing right now, and my computer is being ridiculously slow. Yeah, Andy Gold, the 12th, June 12th. June 12th. You might have seen him on Nick Mom. It says here,
he's not a Nickelodeon act. He just happened to.
And is that going to be at the Ogden?
That's at West Valley.
West Valley.
It's a Thursday night.
Okay.
It's the weekend before Bill Burr, so you might as well just camp out and do that too.
Dude, I am excited for Bill Burr.
It's the best.
Yeah. All right, so follow you on Twitter, Christian Piper
Comedy.
Piper Comedy. I'll have the notes on the show notes on iamsaltlake.com. Connect with you on Facebook. What about YouTube? You got any videos up?
I do. For a while, I was doing a weekly talk show.
Oh, really?
It was a live Google Hangout talk show. I stopped doing it because it was too much work. But there's some videos on there that are fun to watch. It's called Sunday Night Comedy Friend Time.
So is it just you just kind of sitting, hanging out?
It would be me. I do a monologue just on a webcam. And then bring on guests that join the hangout, and I chat with guests. We play improv games. A lot of them, I have a musical guest at the end. I would even have people do stand-up sets on webcam with me putting sound effects in the background. So, I mean, it was a lot of work is the problem because I can't do anything half-assed.
Dude, doing a podcast is a lot of work, man.
Absolutely.
And that's why, I mean, do a podcast. Do something like this, man. I'd love to see some more local comics do some podcasts.
I think that's what I'll do with it. I still like the idea of it being live, and I like it having a theme of being like a talk show. But I think I just need to scale back on the production and just say, I'm just going to chat with somebody and not put on a suit. And
you dressed up in a suit?
Oh, yeah. I wore a suit. I
slicked your hair back.
I found free songs on the internet to use as intro and outro music, different ones every week. I wrote a fresh monologue every week about topical jokes, and I had to find musical guests. I had to troubleshoot it on all my guests' computers. It was a nightmare, and it's just too much work for me to keep doing. So I just got to scale it back. But the videos are on there for the times I did it, and they're funny.
And how do you find that again? YouTube?
Yeah, it's CM Piper.
CM Piper.
I think if you just search my name, it's one of the top results.
And I'll try to, try to get those links. That would just go to iamsaltlake.com under this episode notes.
And if you search Sunday Night Comedy Friend Time, you'll see all the episodes. I think there are like 7 or 8.
Well, that's impressive.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
I'm proud of them. I also stopped because I made my mom cry.
You made your mom cry?
Yeah.
Well, why?
She was watching live, and I had my brother. Now I can't plug this. I shouldn't tell this story.
No, that's all right. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
I'll tell you off the air.
All right. Many thanks goes out to Christian for coming on this episode. I had a great conversation with him. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to that. Can't wait to get him back on the show. I mean, seriously, this guy, so much great information to share, and he's so fun to talk to. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to that. If you haven't left a review for the podcast in iTunes, hit that iTunes link on iamsaltlake.com. Takes you just a few seconds. Helps with the show ratings. Helps boost our ratings in iTunes. And that exposes more people to the show. And that way more people can listen in and enjoy I Am Salt Lake podcast. I'm here once a week. Make sure you subscribe in your favorite podcast feed, however you listen to podcasts. Like I said, MediocreRadioNetwork.com. TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, iTunes, however you listen to podcasts. I Am Salt Lake on Twitter. Search for I Am Salt Lake on Facebook. Connect with me. And until then, you guys have a great week. Enjoy this beautiful weather that we're getting here in Salt Lake City. And I'll talk to you guys again very soon.